Hey everyone, it's Maddie. Welcome back to my channel, and in today's video, as you can tell by the title, is how to deal with a sick day in type 1 diabetes. Many of you know that sick days and diabetes really should not commingle with one another. It's a bad mix, it's a bad disaster, it's a time when things can kind of go wonky, things can kind of go out of your hand no matter what you do, but you have to learn to deal with it no matter what the circumstance. So first of all, what kind of happens on a sick day with a type 1 diabetic? Now everybody's blood sugar is going to respond a little bit differently, and it's going to respond differently depending on if it's a simple cold, the flu, or of something like a bacterial infection. Now I'm basing my data off of my tips that I have learned dealing with Influenza A. I just recovered from Influenza A. Yes, I had a flu shot, but for whatever reason the strain either mutated this year or made a second comeback that the shot could not really help along with. But nonetheless, I'll talk more about that later, but my recovery time was much shorter than my mother, who was unvaccinated and had it originally. So it all depends on what kind of happens for the whole entire flu season. But basically what happens anytime your body is sick, if you're diabetic or non-diabetic, your body and your liver will secrete more stored sugar into your bloodstream to kind of give your body more energy boost to fight off whatever type of infection is lingering inside your body. Not an issue for a non-diabetic because they can just make more and more insulin to cover that. But it's a huge stressor on a type 1 diabetic like myself and like many of you that watch, because you know we do not make insulin, so we need to respond with more synthetic insulin typically. So typically when you're sick, you're going to see higher or slightly elevated blood sugars. Again, everybody's going to be different. Sometimes I've experienced lows with my sick days, and I'll let you know more of that as we delve into that later. But that's the reason behind the insulin resistance and the sick days. With that being said, we'll jump into the tips and tricks I use to kind of help get through this nasty Influenza A. So first of all, I'm going to show you my lovely graph from my sick day. Some of it kind of got cut off when I printed, and my printer's low on ink. But those of you who have not seen a Dexcom graph, this is a 24-hour graph. This up here is high. So this top level right here, kind of where my finger is, that's 140. So you're talking a little over 7.5 millimoles. And this bottom line here is 70 anything below this line here is below 70 milligrams per deciliter, or 3.8-ish, 3.9-ish millimoles. And anything in between is 70 to 140, which is what I consider normal blood sugar and non-damaging blood sugars. So all of a sudden, I felt kind of crappy on a Tuesday, and then Wednesday I felt better, but then Wednesday night I started noticing I was feeling crappier again, and my blood sugar started to show it. So I had fairly normal blood sugars for all those days except Wednesday night leading into Thursday. So all of a sudden, my blood sugar skyrocketed overnight. I took my basal rate. My blood sugar was normal before I went to bed. It was like 102. I'm not even kidding you. But overnight, it just went whew. It has skyrocketed almost to 300. And my alarm kept going off and off and off. And of course, I'm sweating. I'm kind of disoriented in bed. My mom's even like, I hear your alarm going off. Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm probably just have like a high blood sugar of like 160 or something. Which to me, 160 is slightly elevated. I didn't think it was 260. But it actually was. Almost 300. It was at that level. But stayed there for maybe a few hours. But as you can see, it took a while, but it did come down from my basal rate. About 6-7 hours I stayed, 200s, upper 100s, mid 100s, until it finally crossed that line right about here. Came down from my basal rate quite nicely. Then I came to eat my breakfast, did my normal insulin dosing, skyrocketed again to 200, and I took way more insulin. Here to correct about an hour and a half to 2 hours after, because I was not going to set at a blood sugar of 200, seeing as though what had happened the night before, and I should have responded. And I came down, and I kind of had a little bit of a low, then I went up, a little bit of a low, and then here I ate, and I kind of went up, but I stayed nice and steady, and I came down, and therefore we stayed nice and steady for the rest of the way. So it worked out pretty good, but at that point I figured out what to kind of do with my body on a sick day. So, first of all, I'm going to point out to what I definitely could have done better. I could have definitely corrected this high blood sugar in the middle of the night. I should have gotten up and taken a shot of Humalog. High blood sugar of 269 is about as high as I've ever seen myself overnight. Pretty scary. I don't normally see blood sugars much above 200, you guys. And when I see a blood sugar like that, it just kind of scares me, and I kind of sit and wonder, did I do any damage? Am I going to experience this long term? But yada, yada, yada. I'm going to talk more in future videos, but it probably takes long periods of years of you riding blood sugars like that in order to do damage. But one time I don't think was going to kill me. So that's definitely one thing I would have done, is correct those high blood sugars and get them high blood sugars down, especially them overnight ones, as quick as possible. I was kind of disoriented and all that crap, but I wish I would have done that. So the first tip I have for you when I was sick, the best thing you can do is eat lots of easy to digest food, and for me, the lower the carb, the better. Now, by low carb, I mean shooting for 30 grams a meal. And sometimes when you're sick, it's hard to stomach food. It's hard to eat much things that are heavy or carb-laden or whatever the case may be. But I shot for 30 carbs a meal. First of all, I ate kind of lower on the lower end of the gram of carbohydrates per meal, mainly because I had high insulin resistance. I found with me that I had to double my insulin to carb ratio. I literally went from 1 unit covering me 10 grams of carbs to 1 unit covering me only 5 grams of carbs, and that kept my blood sugars in normal range. I did anything and everything I could to keep my blood sugars between 70 and 140. So I had meals that were 30 carbs. I would take a typical 30 carbs, or less than 30 carbs, maybe 20 carbs, and maybe take 4 units, 5 units for a meal at most, just so that I'm not dosing myself super duper high. Because the higher you dose yourself and the higher the carbs, the more risk you have of having high blood sugar, roller coaster blood sugars, and that's the last thing you want when you're sick. So I eat fairly low carb and easy to digest food. Now I'm basing some of these things off the sick day guide that I found from one of you guys. Some of these things I do agree with on here, and some of the things I don't. But some food ideas for you guys. I had like crackers. I had some like a little bit of a salad. Some fresh fruit like berries was good. Like any type of like toast, like smoothie type fruits, jellos, soups, you name it. Those things are really easy on your body to kind of eat, and they slide down easy. They're not really upsetting to your stomach. They're not super acidic. I ate things like that to kind of get my energy for the day and such like that. The next thing I did was take in a ton of fluid. The fluids I took in were primarily water was number one. Water is what your body really craves. But the second thing I took in was Gatorade Zero. Gatorade Zero is no carbs, no sugar drink, but it does have the benefits of the electrolytes that a person with, than somebody who would drink regular Gatorade and get the same benefits of the electrolytes. So that's a way to replenish your electrolytes, and that's something you might run a little low on when you're sick, but it's easy to become dehydrated when you're sick. So make sure that you are drinking a lot of fluid. The next thing you're going to want to do is monitor your ketones. Now, bad Maddie never monitored ketones, even though she probably should have for the couple times she went above 200. And ketones for me show up earlier. Ketones would be also more of a problem if you chose not to eat anything, because your body would basically be burning fat for energy. Now, burning fat for energy because of not eating anything to me is not dangerous. What's dangerous is combining ketones and high blood sugars, which are going to make you more prone to diabetic ketoacidosis. And that leads into my next thing. You're going to be more prone to diabetic ketoacidosis when you are sick. So be sure that you are hydrated. Keep an eye on your bodily symptoms. If you start feeling nauseated, like you want to vomit, that you are disoriented, sleepy more than usual, and you have really, really high blood sugars that just won't come down, I encourage you to go to the emergency room or get looked at and make sure that you're not in severe diabetic ketoacidosis, which you know can be very fatal. It can kill you. It can wreak havoc on your body, etc., etc. You definitely don't want to deal with that. The next thing, obviously, is get plenty of rest. Do not overexert yourself. As a type 1 diabetic, sickness is much harder on us. So, excuse me, I'm still coughing for my thing. But keep in mind that sickness is a little bit harder for us to come through. So keep plenty of rest and stuff. Just relax. Don't really do anything. Stay away from your phone and technology that could have strain on your eyes. Do those kinds of things that are going to kind of relax you. Take naps. Tip your head back and just do nothing. Just relax, literally, because if your body's going, it's going to take longer for you to fight off that infection. And here's my couple tips for anybody who MDI versus pump. Now, I'm not on a pump, but I am on MDIs. If you're on MDIs, be prepared to do plenty of injections. As you can see, in this span of about 12 hours, there was at least 4, 5, 6 shots involved here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I think there's another one thrown in there. So 6 shots. I was willing to correct my blood sugars every hour and a half and dose myself heavier because it takes longer for your body to bring those high blood sugars down because you're so insulin resistant. Be willing to dose yourself more frequently than you would expect. Be more willing to be more insulin resistant than what you would expect. And if you're like me and have enough will and drive to keep your blood sugars in normal range, you need to do that. Because obviously you're not going to damage your body. And the more and more you keep your blood sugars in those healthier ranges, the quicker you are to recover. It's easier on your body. Your body don't have to worry about handling this high blood sugar that's floating through your vessels. It wants to deal with just the illness. And if you can keep your blood sugars normal, that'll keep the illness coming out pretty fast. If you're on a pump, obviously, like MDI, you're going to do a lot of shots. You might increase your insulin to carb ratios. If you're on a pump, you're probably going to already increase your insulin to carb ratios. But if you're also on a pump, you have an option to increase your basal rate if you want to. Now, this is something I kept the same when I was sick. I found it easier to play and dose myself very, very heavily on the rapid-acting insulin because it's going to work quicker on your body. I wanted to keep my baseline the same just so I wasn't confusing my body. But be sure you always keep basal insulin in your body no matter if you're sick or not because that's what your body wants. It needs a basal rate or a basal insulin. If you're on shots, you take a long-acting insulin like Basaglar, Lantus, or Levemir, Traceba, any of those types. If you are on a pump, you have a basal rate. Always make sure you run that because you need at least a little bit of insulin trickling in your body at all times. Otherwise, again, your risk of DKA goes up. Next thing is keep an eye on fever. If you had influenza A like me, fever is possible. Now, I don't have like a thermometer at home. I have like the time to access a thermometer, but I definitely knew I was fevered at one of those points of that 1.5 to 2 days I was sick. I could tell by my head. I took some Tylenol, and actually I didn't have my Dexcom the day I took Tylenol. It was the day before I got my Dexcom back. So it didn't really affect it, but if you're going to take Tylenol and you are on a Dexcom CGM, if you're on the G6, you can take up to 1,000 milligrams per every 6 hours or 2 of acetaminophen Tylenol tablets and not worry about it affecting your sugar readings. But if you are on a G5 or lower, any type of level of acetaminophen or fever reducer will end up screwing up your CGM readings and can make them falsely higher than they actually are. Another option is ibuprofen. Ibuprofen will also reduce inflammation. I kept up on those enough. Always talk to your doctor to make sure that you're okay to take those, but because I only take synthetic insulin, they already told me in the hospital when I was first diagnosed that I could take anything as far as like ibuprofen, Tylenol, like a Zyrtec for like an allergy medication. I could take any of those if I'd like. They're not going to mess with my Humalog or my Basaglar and their jobs to keep blood sugars in line. So keep an eye on your fevers. If your fevers go really, really high and you have really, really high blood sugar, please go to a hospital. That could result in a lot of brain swelling, brain damage, because high fevers can kind of cause your brain to boil, and if you're having high blood sugars, that's going to add more fuel to the fire and could cause more damage later on. So watch out for that. Keep in close contact with your doctor and be ready to call them if you're not sure how to handle things. Now, I didn't really do this. I just kind of winged it, and I found out what worked pretty well for me for a major virus like Influenza A. For any of you that have not had Influenza A, it's like a cold times 10,000 or times 1,000,000. It is awful. You have body ache, fever. You have no willpower to do anything. Eating is painful. Breathing is painful. When you cough, it is extremely painful. It hurts your throat. Your eyes burn. Your whole body feels like it's ready to fall apart. The flu is absolutely horrid. So you need to be in close contact with your doctor if you can't get your blood sugars down, you can't get your ketone levels down, or you just are so sick that you think you might need aid, they might tell you to go to the hospital, come in, see a primary care, whatever the case may be. Please keep in contact with your doctor if you need to. Like I said, I kind of winged it and figured it out myself, but don't relate on me. I figured it out and got it worked out for me. But if at any time at the drop of a hat I would have had a question, I would have called, because this was truly my first worst sick day experience dealing with type 1 diabetes. Things I'm going to say here is avoid caffeine and any high sugars or added sugars in foods. Again, that has everything to do with like the carbohydrates, because your body's already producing enough sugar. You don't really need to add more sugar and add more fuel to that high blood sugar fire. And caffeine could also have more of an impact when you're sick. I know, depending on if you're sick or not, you're going to, again, be more insulin resistant. And if caffeine affects your blood sugar when you're sick, don't drink it. Caffeine really doesn't affect my blood sugar anyway, but I didn't want to put it in my body just because it would just add more stimulant and it might make my heart pound faster, and my heart was already pounding and my head was already pounding from the flu. I didn't need to stimulate my body any more than it already was, so I avoided caffeine like the plague. And the next couple things I'm going to talk about is things that you can do to kind of prevent things or make things a little bit of a faster recovery time. So I did get a flu shot. However, like I said, the virus either had mutated or the shot wasn't strong enough to last a second round of the flu for this 2018-2019 flu season here that went through. But do get a flu shot. Again, I'm going to make a video all about those. Some people don't want to get them. And I guess I can't stop you, but I am pro-vaccine. I am for the flu shot. I've been through every experience where I've not had the flu shot and I've had the flu. I've had the flu at age 4 years old. This was my second time in my life I've had the flu. And I didn't have a flu shot when I was 4 and ended up with the flu. I've also had it where I've never had the flu and had the shot. Perfect. That's what it needs to be. And I've had it where I've never had I didn't have the shot, but I was exposed to the flu. And that scared the living crap out of me that I never ended up with it, and I got lucky. So I've gotten it every year since then. And same with this year is kind of an odd exception for me that I got the shot and ended up with the flu. You can deal with it. But if you do get the flu shot, it will probably shorten your recovery time or the time that you are down. For example, I was only down for about 2 days, where, like I said, my mother was down about 4 to 5, 3 to 5-ish days because she was unvaccinated. The flu shot will offer some protection only because your body kind of recognizes the virus that was going around this year, and it can fight it off a little bit quicker than, say, somebody who didn't have the shot previous. Another thing you can do is dose yourself pretty heavily on vitamin C. Again, I'm not one for making very expensive pee, but if you want to take vitamin C tablets, go for it. Or diet juice drinks that are low in carb but have a lot of vitamin C in them, add it. Ascorbic acid, any of those things with high vitamin C helps boost your immune system. And vitamin C is something that we can't store. So putting that in your body every day is very important, and it's very important for immune health. So dose up on your vitamin C. It can't hurt you. You can't overdose really on it. Well, you probably could, but I mean, you'd probably have to eat like 10 pallets full of vitamin C tablets in order for you to get that way. Keep an eye on those blood sugars. Check every 1 to 2 hours. If you have a meter, if you're on a CGM, still check one every 1 to 2 hours, and be more willing to finger stick. I did a lot more finger sticks only because I didn't have my Dexcom at the time. But even though I had my Dexcom for part of this sickness, I was still testing with a blood sugar meter quite often. Always remember to take your insulin even if you can't eat. You're probably going to find you're going to increase your insulin. Now mine was I had to double my insulin to carb ratios. For you, you might need to triple. For you, you might only need to do it 1.5 times. Or you might need to quadruple it. Do it 3 or 4 times the amount that you normally do. And that's about it. Keep an eye on them ketones. Keep up on your fluids. Eat things that are easy to digest. I wouldn't drink anything with carbs unless your blood sugar's low, and be very careful treating your low blood sugars. So you can see I had a couple. I didn't take a lot. I took very minimal doses for lows because I knew my body was going to pump out a bunch of sugar anyway and be in response to being sick. So be very, very careful with that. I do personally find it easier to deal with lows when I was sick than I was dealing with highs, and towards the end, because I was dosing myself heavy, I even dosed myself heavy the day after I felt better, just to make sure my body was out of that producing sugar in response to stress kind of stage with my liver, through my liver. So I dumped myself with extra insulin a day, and I kind of ran a little bit of lower blood sugars. But to me, it was easier to deal with the low blood sugars than I was sick, when I was with the high blood sugars, because the high blood sugars just made me feel more and more miserable. And the higher the blood sugars, it's going to take take more time for your body to heal. So I would much personally, again, rather deal with low blood sugars than high blood sugars. And that was my theory. This is what I did. Again, what you may or may not do, you may or may not agree on. I believe that you shouldn't eat a lot of carbs when you're sick, because obviously you're going to add more fuel to the fire. You do want to keep some in your body, and take a bunch of insulin for it and keep your blood sugars as close to normal as possible. Otherwise, you're going to produce a lot of ketones. But I could be totally ketotic right now, being pretty healthy and having normal blood sugars right now. My blood sugar right now is 111, and I could be ketotic right now and producing some ketones because my body could be burning off fat too, and in response to burning up all the sugar for energy. But the risk with having ketones when you're sick is the higher risk of diabetic ketoacidosis. Now, in terms of dealing with other things besides the flu, if you have a virus, I notice when I'm sick with a little cold, it doesn't get as erratic. Some days my blood sugars will ride lower when I have a cold. And sometimes I'll get it where I'll go up to the 160s or 170s, like a slight elevated, and I'll have a hard time coming down. I keep pretty much everything normal with a little tiny virus, but I'm more willing to correct my blood sugars every 2 hours. Whereas with the flu, you're probably going to have to make some major changes to your doses until you get out of the sick period. And if you have some sort of bacterial infection, like strep throat or whatever the case may be, I personally have not had to been on antibiotics. I was only on antibiotics one time in my life, and I was non-diabetic at age 11 for strep throat, so you're talking almost 10 years ago. So I can't personally speak from experience with dealing with antibiotics and insulin, but be very careful with that. Make sure that it is compatible with the insulin you're taking, that it's not going to run damage or affect the way your insulin works. And do know, ladies, watch out for yeast infections if you're going to be on antibiotics or have super duper high blood sugars with sickness. Yeast absolutely loves to thrive in high blood sugar environments. So keep an eye on your area down there and make sure nothing is getting infected, nothing's inflamed. If you're on an antibiotic, I hear you could just take probiotics or take some like Greek yogurt or something with natural live bacteria, and that can help kind of offset a potentially induced yeast infection from antibiotics. And antibiotics and steroids could also make your blood sugars run high or affect your blood sugars in that way and make you more insulin resistant. So if you're on an antibiotic or a steroid, be more willing to dose yourself frequently. I think I've touched on just about everything to deal with a sick day. Again, I'm kind of nasally and I apologize. You'll probably see me wearing the same clothes in a video on Sunday because I am pre-filming these because I have a busy week coming up. But I hope you got a better idea of what to do on a sick day with type 1 diabetes, how I personally handled it, and some of the tips I gave you, and you got to get a kind of glimpse of what happened with me with these sick days and kind of things I would do in response to a sick day. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Once I hit 100 subscribers, I will be sharing my type 1 diabetes diagnosis story. And until tomorrow for more videos, take care, God bless. Remember, be kind, spread positivity, and be thankful for everything you have. You guys, you're so lucky to be alive. We're so lucky to be here. And yeah, just be thankful for what you do have and not dwell on the things that you don't have. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, everyone.